Now, lifeadministration.com presents the Life Administration Podcast. Here are your hosts, Leslie Loftus and Ryan Talon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Life Administration Podcast. My name is Ryan Talon, and with me, as always, is Leslie Loftus. We're super excited to bring this to you guys today. We're going to be sharing a lot of information, just a lot of things that have been put on our heart that we want to discuss with y'all. So we're going to get going. Leslie, how the heck are you?
You know, I'm doing fine today because we're recording this in June, and I am a mother of 4 children, and currently all of them are somewhere else. I've got 3 at camp, different camps, and 1 on a mission trip. And so I am on day 3 of my 5 days of childlessness.
It takes some life administration just to be able to schedule 4 kids to all be gone at the same time. So you and your husband,
does.
right?
It does, exactly. And that's why you and I we're doing a marathon 3-day recording session. So if like the first couple of episodes show us in the same duds, there's a reason for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no comments about wash your clothes, people. We get it. Anyway, so life administration, we're going to be using that term a lot. What the heck does it mean?
Life administration was the term that my husband came up with when we first got married and we were trying to figure out chores. Basically, it's the cups of coffee and the clean socks of life. And a little more meat to it. It's the essential and usually repetitive stuff that has to be done, but you kind of want it done in background because it's not supposed to take over your life. It's supposed to make it so that you can go on and do the things that you have been called to do.
Yeah. You know, not to bury the lead here, but I think a lot of us will sort of get caught up like in the to-do lists, right? And it's like, that's not what this is. Like, this isn't like how to make a to-do list. This isn't how
we
to...
will touch on that a little bit.
Absolutely. But like, it can be a detriment to your life instead of a positive thing as well, right? Like...
Absolutely, because you can get so caught up in trying to maintain life administration, or if you don't know how to do it, you can get so bogged down because you don't have the skills to do it that you're constantly putting out fires all over the place because your calendar isn't right. You don't actually have that paper that you need for the financial institution and to do the loans or to do the paperwork to get your kid into school. It can... Later on, it can build up so that it really causes some significant problems.
So we're also going to be talking a lot about technology and sort of like where does it fit in all of this? Like where does it fit in the life administration process? So much so like we don't want to swing the pendulum too far where we're all technological, but also, right, we find merit in some of that, the older ways of doing things. Could you just like talk to us like a little bit about trying to marry the two, like what we're going to do in a broad sense there?
This is going to be something that comes up repeatedly over. We don't want to throw out all the old ways. There's a lot of wisdom hanging out in the old ways. But at the same time, the new, you can't just toss out all the old and say, oh my gosh, this device is awesome. It can do everything I want. I'm totally connected with anybody I need to be connected to. That's not exactly how, it doesn't work very well that way. But at the same time, this is not the root of all evil. So one of the main things that we're trying to do is figure out how to merge some of the old ways and the new ways so that this becomes a tool that helps you out, not something that keeps you from the rest of your life. And you're not... quick story. Quick stories. So one of my kids is in a athletics program, and there was a lot of communication problem with the parents. We just weren't getting the information, and it wasn't until the end of the year that we found out the poor mom who was running it was still doing, like, she had a binder system. So she was having us turn in emails, and then she was transcribing those, and you can imagine for 50 emails you have 5 with a typo. I mean, it was doing it the hard way. Now, that was the way it was done 20 years ago when I was a kid. She would have been super organized for that, and I think this was her youngest child, so she had older children, so she was used to doing it that way. But that doesn't work anymore. At the same time, she had all the information that she needed, and sometimes when we're doing everything the new way, we have gaps.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Anyway, how to figure out how to make those work together.
Yeah, and it's ultra important. I think what's really critical, what you just talked about, is that the cell phone, it's really a tool.
Yes.
Really, it's not something that takes over your life. And I think...
And it doesn't do anything on its own.
Right. You have
it doesn't create connections. It can help you maintain them. It can help you start one that you then go off and you create a real connection out of that. But it's still virtual.
Right. You have to have this fundamental knowledge of how to interact with people and that sort of thing. Otherwise, I would actually even say that if you don't know how to interact with people, if you don't know how to speak with care, that can actually be a detriment because people sort of, they put in what they are feeling when they read whatever or when they see whatever.
Exactly. I mean, everybody has this problem with email and text. It's hard to read sarcasm in a text. It's very easy to read it when you're face to face.
Sometimes.
Yes, well, sometimes. Okay, fine. Sometimes.
Why are we doing this? So we talked about what life administration means, but I mean, the real question to me is why are we doing it? And it sort of stemmed from this idea of what are we teaching kids in school? What skills are we equipping them for life, and then kind of taking what we thought about, which was not a lot. We don't think that a lot's getting done, and then asking, some folks that were in college, like, hey, what are the things you're worried about? What are the things that you're not learning? And this is sort of where we landed. So just talk a little bit about, this and what we're going to do and what it actually means.
One of the problems I think we have in the modern world is we mistake things that are relatively easy for things that are things that are intuitive. And most of this stuff is not intuitive. You don't just know how to do, say, a family budget. But they're not teaching home ec anymore. They're not teaching shop anymore for the most part. Parents are so busy trying to do the life administration themselves because they weren't, when we're talking about the 40-somethings, they didn't have as much of this back when they were younger either, and so they're now getting bogged down in it. Grandparents are older, not around for a whole bunch. So the young aren't getting this education and practical life skills as a general rule. So two things happened. We've been pondering this for a little over a year now.
Yeah,
but one of the things that hit us last year for summer, one of my daughters was home ill. And she was watching one of her favorite YouTubers, and the gal had gotten into lifestyle videos. And this was a video of, look at my new pantry. And Ryan, you remember this? It looked like a Container Store catalog. I mean, no, but clearly it had been set up by props people.
Yeah. There was not one piece of Captain Crunch in the wrong place.
Right, and
that cereal
it clearly wasn't
perfectly
used. But as we go through the comments and we're looking at this, there are a lot of people like, oh my gosh, my life would be so much easier if my, pantry, my bathroom, whatever, was organized that well. Well, that's a very unrealistic expectation. So we don't have the skills to be able to do it because in this case, I'm pretty sure this lady had at least 4 assistants helping her out with that. And also she was living alone, and I think maybe she had a boyfriend and a dog. So not getting heavy use.
Not 4
anyway.
kids.
Yeah,
no husband or significant other.
So this wasn't a high traffic pantry. So we create this unrealistic expectation that this is what a well-managed, in this case, pantry looks like, and it's not. So that's one of the things that happened. And then the other thing, and we practiced this, we've done a lot. So I used to write as well, and when I decided that I was going to go full in on this, I was listening, this is back in March or so, listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and one of the things I used to write about a lot was I got sick of people talking about problems. Let's talk about the problem. Let's discuss the problem. Let's discuss possible origins of the problem. But nobody gets around to actually solving the problem.
Let's discuss practical solutions. No.
Oh,
Let's not do that.
Exactly. So it was another one of those podcasts having to do with something that the young don't know, something that the young aren't doing properly. And then the host went on to say, well, and I don't know who's going to teach them how to do it. And then just breezed on back and I was like, ooh. Somebody's got to teach this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't keep blaming the young for not knowing how to participate in a community or not knowing how to budget when we haven't actually taught them how to do these things.
Yeah.
So that's when we decided going full in on this.
Yeah, and I think it's just a cavalcade of there's so many holes, right, in people's knowledge, and myself included. Like there's tons of holes in my knowledge, and one of the things that I think that I'm bringing to the podcast is sort of like this everyman opinion or viewpoint, which I hope to ask the dumb questions. I hope to ask the questions that people don't want to ask because they're embarrassed. And I think there's a little piece of that, right?
Absolutely.
That as you
Ryan is also here to make sure that I stay on target because I'm big on tangents. Anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of tangents, I totally lost that train of thought. So that one's gone.
Sorry.
Yep.
You're here as the everyman. To ask the questions that aren't dumb. Yeah, They're not dumb questions.
And I think that when you get to a certain age, you sort of expect that you have it all figured out, right? Or that you should have it all figured out, right? Like I look at myself as a 38-year-old man, and it's easy for me to go on Instagram or Facebook. Not that I do either one of those things because I'm smarter than that. But I know that people do, and then they start measuring themselves up to what they see, right? Which is the perfect presentation of what this person wants you to see. And then they feel bad about themselves. And then they got shame. Hey, I don't get to go on that vacation. I don't have the money to do that. Oh, my kids aren't dressed that well. Like, oh my gosh, look how perfect everything is, right? It's all BS. But what it does do is it messes with us internally, right? It messes with our ability to go out and seek knowledge, because what we want to do is not show any weakness to anyone, anytime, anywhere, period.
Right.
And so I think if we sort of press into this podcast with that filter of hey, we're all just trying to learn here, right? We're trying to figure this thing out, and we're trying to have our life be as good as it possibly can be. And we know that when our life is organized, or when we have all of our ducks in a row, that it allows us to have time to do the things that are really important, i.e. develop relationships, right? Go on vacations, whatever that looks like to you, because it's all different.
Right. Our major goal here is to teach some life skills so that you can do all of that background stuff without it getting in the way of doing the things that you want to do and that you're called to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too is that, we're an umbrella. We're not necessarily going to be the experts on every single subject matter that we talk about.
No, I'm going to point you in some directions, and you're going to have show notes that'll have links to various things, so we can kind of direct you to some of the details. But we're
absolutely and we're gonna bring guests onto the show when they have issues, or when we have issues, or I don't say issues is the word, right? But more we have more questions, right? We have more questions, or someone asks us something maybe we don't know the answer to, because we're not afraid to get our hands dirty and figure out the answers to those questions as well.
Or listeners send in questions. Happy to collate
and we're definitely going to get to that.
Absolutely.
So we've been going on for probably 12 minutes about this. What on God's green earth makes you qualified, Leslie Loftus, to even talk about this? What are we talking about here?
I'm a mother of many. I have a background that's heavy in administration. Even when I was a lawyer, there's a lot of administration. And specifically, I was often the one that was called in to create, we're going to start this office and we need somebody to create all the procedures for the office. So I've done a lot of the creating of the plans and stuff before. Lived lots of places with and without my husband. So we have a lot of different perspectives, done a lot of stress tests. Okay, how does this planning scenario work somewhere else versus here? And then kind of with that, got my own mistakes. I'm in my late 40s now. I have made plenty of mistakes. I have done the to-do list that is so complicated that I spend more time updating and maintaining the to-do list than I do actually doing the things on the to-do list. When we get to life management, that's one of the things we're going to talk about.
I fall victim. It's 45 minutes to redo the to-do list from yesterday that only got halfway done.
Right, exactly.
But if I had only spent that extra 45 minutes, I probably would have got the whole thing done.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, that was an article in the Wall Street Journal recently. They had a thing on planners, analog paper planners, which is great.
Franklin Covey.
Right. I'm all about going. I like doing things the analog way until you kind of learn them. But some of these stories, there were usually women with 15 planners. They had the planner for their health stuff. They had the planner for their food stuff. It was, and they were talking too about spending a couple of hours on the weekend. That's not. It's wonderfully creative. Many of them were actually quite beautiful and lovely to look at, but it wasn't actually getting the stuff done. It was letting the details of the stuff get in the way of actually doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, So we're going to shift gears here a little bit, and we're going to talk about our upcoming episodes and why we think it's important to cover these, right? There's sort of an order. We want to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. So the first episode that we're going to go through is making a life plan.
Okay. And this is we did a little bit of crowdsourcing, crowd research. And this is the one that it was a little lower down for requests, but it's really the Rosetta Stone. It's the foundation of so many other things that we're going to talk about. In fact, think of a foundation like a building. So you have the structural framework that it doesn't dictate exactly how the building is going to turn out, but it does generally dictate the shape. It generally dictates what it's going to be used for. And the taller it goes, or the bigger it goes, the more it has to give a little. So we're talking about a flexible framework as well. But really, without that, that's how people wake up at 35 going, exactly how did I get here? Even whether or not you got in a good place or a bad place, there's a lot of just accidental arrivals because we don't really plan something out. So that episode, we will build on that in so many other ways.
And I think really what you're talking about there too is like being intentional.
Yes.
Right? Being intentional with your time, having like, it's almost like, we talk about this all the time, freedom within the framework, like understanding that not every single thing is going to apply to you. Some things maybe only 3 or 4 points apply to you, but the reality is that we want to give everyone a complete list of tools that will work for them, and then try to be as comprehensive as possible. The next episode that we're going to talk about is one that I'm really looking forward to, Money 101.
This was a surprise #1 request, and it also came up in Wall Street Journal article back in April. So they had a feature about what is it that your university is not teaching you that you wish your university did. And this guy who's a finance major at a Texas university writes back saying, I know all about how to do a $100 billion bond issue, but I don't know how to do basic finances. And a few weeks later, I get an email from a friend of mine that one of the high schools here in town is going to start adding, it's one of the prestigious private schools here in town, they're adding a budgeting class back into their curriculum because we just don't know how to do this. And I think it definitely was, I knew it would be high on the list, but I didn't know it would be #1. It was the thing that everybody requested.
Yeah, and my sister-in-law and her best friend, this was their #1 topic as well. They're both sophomores in college, and it's shocking to see how little they're actually taught about a household budget and finances and how to plan.
Credit card interest works.
Yeah, right.
Stuff that can really mess you up.
Yep, and the thing about it too is that because money is sort of like when you're in the negative side of it, when you don't really understand it, it's sort of death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like that little bill over here, like that $25 is not that important, but that other $25 is not that important. But what you don't understand is like, well, that $50 that then is put someplace with compound interest over the course of X amount of years ends up being $500.
And it does.
Right. And
compound interest is a beast.
Yeah. So it's like, you got to understand sort of just the concepts behind it. The next thing that we're going to talk about is basic household management.
Right. This is another basic building block. And even if you have the means and the intent to hire a staff that would rival Downton Abbey, you still need to know how to do it so you can direct the staff. How to run a kitchen, how to set up a cleaning schedule, how to make sure that your yard is watered, that your mail comes in. All of this stuff, there's a ton of details, and each of them in the individual seem quite easy, but they're cumulative. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you can spend 3 hours just doing what you think of as menial tasks, and in your head, they were only 10 minutes each, and they were only 10 minutes each, but you had 20 of them to do.
Yep.
I did the math wrong there, but you get the idea.
Right. It's a long time.
But, when I was post-college, I worked on cruise ships. I was a history major, and so what are you going to do? Wait tables? So I waited tables on cruise ships. And in my tenure there, I worked for 3 different chefs. And the chef that we enjoyed working for the most, the chef that ran the best kitchen, was the one that knew everything about that, because he had actually, when he started with the company, he'd gone on and he'd driven the dishwasher line for a night or two. So he'd actually gotten in nitty gritty, done each of the tasks that needed to be done. So he knew how everything in the kitchen worked. And therefore he could direct us. He didn't have unreasonable expectations of us because he didn't, he knew what it took to do these things. By far the best restaurant manager that
I mean, I can remember, not to dovetail off it too much, but working in various corporations, you have folks sitting in corporate, and I worked at the corporate level, I worked at the store level, whatever you were, the front lines. And when you're in the corporate position, you don't have a clear understanding of what it actually takes to get something done at the front lines, right? Because there's things that you can't know unless you're doing it, right? So it's important to become an expert on the things that are important to you and in your life, right? I mean, like
and
that
all
at the end
of
of the
those
day.
household management things, from cleaning the toilet to running a menu plan for your kitchen, all of those things fall into that. And they require a little bit of practice.
So if we have basic household management, then the episode after that, to me, is like the +1, right? Is like we make it a little bit better. So this is going to be entitled Making a Beautiful Home.
This was also a surprise to me, how high it ranked, although I shouldn't have been surprised. The fact is, people want to have a place that's not only run efficiently and well and functional, but that is joy to dwell in. Matter of fact, Jim and I had a event here a couple of nights ago, and I got the best compliment. Apparently the buzz at the office was a lot of the associates wanted to come work for Jim because they liked coming here, because the house was beautiful, but it didn't feel like a museum. This is not the house that Cameron Fry grew up in. Right. Sorry, Ferris Bueller's reference there for you. And that's really what you want. You want the space, you want it to be lovely, but you still want it to be welcoming. And that's a Philip that I think people really desire. And there's a few tips and tricks in how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. The next episode, one I'm really looking forward to, is Secrets to Staying Married. Couldn't believe that this came up as a top episode request.
Again, a surprise, but I think it has to do a lot with there's not a lot of good information out there. There's not a lot of possible mentors. People are very curious about this. They want to know how to make relationships work, but they don't see a lot of relationships working around them. So
I think, if I could go off on a tangent for a second.
Of course.
I think what has happened.
Yeah, right. About anybody going on a tangent.
The queen of the tangents is allowing me, a mere mortal of tangents, to proceed. No. So I think that the reality is that when I think about growing up, like I came from a broken home. And I think you sort of grow up with this intention of, at least for me, I don't ever want that to happen to my family or to my kids. But then what happens is you don't have any sort of tools to know how to do that, right? You basically say, like, I want this to happen. Well, I might as well be saying, like, I want to jump to the moon. Right. Because if you don't have the skill or the tools to be able to do it, you're in trouble. And marriage is hard. And you have to, and like at some point, and we're going to get into it, it's like your feelings, man, like they don't really matter.
Right.
And we're going to get into that. But I'm just super excited to really dig into that, because I think having a strong family, that's a foundational unit for having a great life, right? And having a great family and having a great marriage and understanding how important that is, that bleeds into so many other areas of your life that without that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You might be doing some of these other things in life administration, but if you don't have a partner that supports you, or even so, maybe you don't have a partner right now, but when you walk into a relationship, maybe having some tools that you didn't have before, right? Especially when it comes to communicating, that's so important. So anyway, I could go on for hours and hours and hours on that. I'm just really excited to get.
When we get to that episode,
that's going to be a long one. Buckle in for that. And then last but certainly not least, planning for babies. You got a good marriage? Bring on the babies.
And I was also surprised this one came up, but I was pleased to see it come up because it shows at least the young recognize that there needs to be some planning done, that you can't always just say, oh, poof, it's time to have a baby. And you can't wait for the perfect, there is no perfect moment to have a child, et cetera. So I'm happy to see that they acknowledge that some planning needs to happen.
No, definitely. Okay, and so the next segment, we're going to talk about things that you will hear more than once. So I'm going to pose a very poignant question. What things are we going to hear more than once? and why is this important? Why do we even care that we're talking about this?
Because I liked it. I wanted to give everybody a little bit of idea of what we were going to talk about.
Sure.
Some of the themes that we're going to go throughout this
Absolutely.
podcast. So the first one is life has learning curves. And whether you're talking about basic domestic skills, they're easy, but they're skills. They require practice. Kids won't do anything that you haven't given them some, like you can't just snap your fingers. I won't. He'll get in trouble. I'll get in trouble for sound. You can't just snap your fingers and say, oh, okay, my child is at their 6-month milestone, so clearly they should be doing this, when you haven't actually done any of the building block things, or as I usually say it, it's a long road from milk to beef jerky. Part of it has to do with when they get teeth and everything, but you can't just, once all the molars come in, say, oh, here's some beef jerky, and let your kid figure it out. You've learning curves.
Simple means quick.
Yes, simple means no.
It doesn't mean that.
No, often it doesn't. The next one we're going to say a lot is time is relentless, finite. You only get so much of it. And a lot of these life administration skills take time. But again, we assume that since they're simple, they're quick. And simple does not always mean quick. Certainly not cumulatively. Because it's one thing to have, okay, this is a 10-minute task, but if you've got 10 of those 10-minute tasks, now you're 2 hours into it, Whenever we're talking about marriage, this will be a repetitive thing. I am not talking about marriages with problems of the 4 A's, abandonment, abuse, addiction, and adultery.
Right.
We're talking about general relationship issues, but once again, I will say that lots.
Right.
Not the 4 A's require
deep
mentors,
sort of.
They require extra help, and that's not the kind of thing we're going to cover.
No, we're much more like smoothing out the edges kind of situation. Can I jump in really fast because I do want to say one thing because I think this is an important point. When in talking about time in general, I think it's important that how you live your days is how you live your weeks. How you live your weeks is how you live your months, and how you live your months is how you live your years. And so my wife and I just had this really, really big conversation about kind of when we're 45 or 50, what does our life look like? What do those people do every single day? What time, like when they wake up, what's the first thing they do? All these sorts of things. And again, it goes back to being intentional. So
you and I could go off and be geeky and say your focus determines your reality.
Yeah, there you go. So it's important that, yes, there's not a lot of it, but there's so much of it as well. It's a really, really sort of messed up
the fact that life administration is repetitive is the thing that really it's a little bit like the compound interest of life.
Yeah.
It just keeps coming. And the next thing you know, you've spent a whole lot of time.
And what you do with it determines how rich you are. Okay, cool.
Okay, we've already done the blending of the old and the new at the beginning. We're going to talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And the big one that I want to get across, life administration is not low work. It's necessary work that's only a big deal if you're not doing it or if you're making a big deal out of it. But it's not small work. It's not shit work. That's important stuff that needs to be done, but it needs to be done in the background so it doesn't interfere with the rest of your life and you can go off and do what you're called to do.
Yeah, I mean, having someone in your house that's good at life administration, they become the CEO of the house. And companies go as the leadership goes, right? So if you have someone that's dialed in, your whole house is going to be dialed in. If you have someone that's not dialed in, then your whole house is not going to be dialed in. Whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether that's job,
that's
whatever.
A major theme in making a beautiful home because you kind of have to have the foundations
going.
Absolutely. Because you can't really get up to beautiful before you have functional.
Yep. Well, if by some miracle you're still with us as we've gone extremely long, but I just feel like there's been a lot of good stuff.
12 minutes.
Yeah, but I feel like it's been a lot of good stuff, and you know, we want to show you our heart. I think that's important. Like, we don't want to get caught up in being perfect in everything that we do, but we want you to know what we feel, what we think. That would be very hard
for us, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I know. Because I'm so perfect. Yeah. So anyway, I digress. If you're still with us, thank you so much for still being here. We're so excited to have you with us. It's going to be a fun ride. We're going to have a lot of laughs. We're going to talk about a lot of serious issues. We're going to talk about a lot of fun things too, you know? So to me, I hope this is a place that we can get together, have conversations, bounce ideas off of each other. So we're looking for a lot of listener feedback. We're going to have emails that you're going to be able to send to us. You can hit us up on Twitter or in other spots. And also we're going to have mini casts as well that we're really going to get into the details of some of these things. So make sure you're staying tuned and looking in the show notes for that as well. Leslie, what else do we have for them? Where can people find you most active if they want to reach out and talk to you?
Mostly I will be on the website.
Mostly be on the website?
I will mostly be on the website. I do a little bit on Twitter, but I don't tend to...
Where can people find you on Twitter? Just out of curiosity.
Leslie Loftus Tex.
Yes.
TX. But yeah, I don't do direct messaging and stuff, and it's one of the things we'll talk about, streamlining, because if you have to check voicemail and all of the messaging, you can spend all your day just
dealing with that right
messages.
now.
Right. So I am on email, which that is at the website, and I will be at the website.
Awesome. And you guys can find me most active on Twitter. I'm at Ryan Talon. Again, so thankful, so excited. Next episode, Money 101.
Money 101.
We're getting into it. Very excited. Glad to have you with us. We'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Dude, that was 30 minutes.
Yeah. 31. Fine by me, man. It didn't feel like draggy. You felt like we were talking about playing.
Okay.
No, it was...
Yep.
Okay.
Felt good, man. Next.
Really good. This camera dropped out. That camera overheated.
We'll be fine.
But this one stayed right.
We need to give the cameras a break.
Well, this one's been off since about the 11-minute mark. We got air going here.
Oh, it doesn't look like it, does it? It's 84 up here.
I just hit the minus button. I thought it would come on.
Yeah, you might want to put on...
What's this cool fan auto?
My recorder only says 2 minutes and 33 seconds for what it's worth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because every 5 minutes it creates a new file.
Oh, okay, great.
Got
Just
it.
in case. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to turn mine off to save battery, and it's not.
Sliding back. Just slide it back and hold it for a second. Negative.
Negative ghost right. Pattern
Pattern
is
is
full.
full.
The air's on. The air's on.
How do we stop recording?
You just hold it up like you started recording.
Oh, I missed that part.
Very simple machine.